Hi.
Hi.
We're back. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of
It's like a cliffhanger.
a technical difficulty, but we will patch this together and we'll post it online in a little bit later. But we were just about to talk to Jill, and Jill was going to give us the really, really, really important warning signs, or just what does anxiety and depression really look like?
Yeah.
Because I think that we often, as parents, mask what it could be. And I definitely want to make sure that we, share with our audience now that they're coming back little by little. Make sure and give us your questions too. Sorry about that.
Well, I think that it was such a great thing to start off talking about by just the idea of having a conversation with your teen, because I think the thing about anxiety that is so difficult is that many of the kids who are suffering from more clinical types of anxiety they appear to be kind of not the squeaky wheel, if you will. They maybe seem like the kid who is, or really is the kid who's performing well in school, who is got friends, who is, is overall could be somebody who is able to kind of perform under pressure. Mm-hmm. However, what we know about anxiety is that it really is this idea of worrying a lot of the time, or, anticipating bad things happening in the future, mm-hmm. Or thinking about things too much. And it can be, really a lot of tension in their mm-hmm. bodies. It mm-hmm. can keep them up at night. It can cause people to be very frustrated, or, do behaviors like making lists and putting things off that can end up with somebody getting, kind of sad and down about, just how tense and worried they feel a lot of the time.
And what would you say is a healthy anxiety? So, it's an honor mm-hmm. student with a huge load, right? And they have a certain GPA. And Lina, before we even started, Lina made a great point that we've made them have anxiety, with some of the SATs and the mm-hmm. goals and the things that they're supposed to be doing and achieving and all this kind of stuff. I don't think that they're kids anymore. So mm-hmm. I guess it's, what's a healthy anxiety and what's not? Because that's really what parents struggle with.
Absolutely. And I think one thing to remember about anxiety is that it comes from fear, and fear is a normal emotion, right? Mm-hmm. We are all born with the ability to feel fear, and we feel fear for a reason, mm-hmm. because it keeps us safe, and it tells us something important about our mm-hmm. environment. It tells us to stay away from something that is obviously dangerous, or, that it could hurt us. So, when somebody is experiencing a normal amount of anxiety, they may be reacting to the perception of something mm-hmm. being dangerous, or, the idea that something dangerous could be happening in the future. Whether that's realistic or not, mm-hmm. Can be different. I mean, teens are not always able to tell what is a realistic worry. That's one of the ways a good conversation can come in to play, on a daily basis with your teen. But I think the one thing to understand is that is going to be something that may go up, may go down, depending on the day, depending on the perception of how much threat they're feeling, mm-hmm. at a given time. And that's normal. But, when it gets, frequent, persistent, getting in the way of, doing the things that they want to on a daily basis, getting in the way of kind of normal routines, and sleeping, eating, those kinds of things. That's when we start to be concerned that this is maybe more than, I'm just a little more worried than usual about a test, or a little more upset than usual about the idea that somebody, slighted me at school or something along those lines.
Okay. I would say also that, in a teen, something that's kind of to me it's almost like a telltale. When somebody brings me a teen, I always check with their social group. Mm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the time when they're highly anxious, they may have the social group, but it's not they don't describe it as support. Mm-hmm. They're nitpicking and looking at it in a particular way because that becomes their tribe, that becomes their second family. Yeah. So sometimes when there's high anxiety, you'll hear this storyline, this negative storyline about how things are happening to them or at them or with them, Sometimes I'm sort of weary of the bully campaign, because sometimes they can even hide behind, well, they're bullying me. Mm-hmm. But when you begin to tease it out, and again, that's why why should we talk to them?
Right.
You want to check in with them and be mindful not to be that mama bear, right? Because
particularly important.
It's so important because it's this idea of I don't want anybody to make their child a victim or a perpetrator. We need to help our children understand that there's choice. Even when somebody is being incredibly awful to you, there is the choice to walk away, as best you can, or seek assistance. And the other thing with anxiety is that a lot of parents begin to avoid with them.
Right.
And I know why, because in your parent heart, you see the distress.
That's right.
And you're like, well, I can't cause that kind of distress on my child. But then you fall into that loop.
Absolutely. And I really want to build on what you're saying. Two things. One, I think that what you said about the idea that kids, teens who are anxious, never are really feeling satisfied with their social group. They're kind of always looking for, that one thing that could be wrong, and that's such a common thing that we'll see, that they kind of pick out the one little piece of negative information and, kind of can't stop really thinking about that one piece. But I think the part about parenting is so key here. And I think, once we get to the teenage years, it sometimes feels like, well, maybe the parenting part is not as important, or maybe, how I get involved or how much I get involved is not really that important. But what we know is that parenting the emotional or the anxious adolescent is like, it feels like a minefield.
Yep. Right.
Because there, exactly what Lina said, that there is a normal pull from the time that they're babies to soothe them when they're distressed.
That's
right. That is your job.
Right.
That is your job as a parent. And, you expect that normally a child is going to take over that role of soothing themselves. But a child who's struggling with anxiety, a child who's struggling with depression, they have a really hard time soothing themselves or making themselves feel better in that situation. So they're going to keep turning to you for reassurance or to get out of that situation, sometimes ahead of time, sometimes during the situation.
And brilliantly.
Exactly. Right. And it's never going to be about the fact that they were anxious, right? That has nothing to do with it.
Right.
But, that is a trap, exactly as you said, that, we really good parents fall into it. Some of the best parents that I've met, that, and sometimes just telling you that, that you might fall into that trap, it can really help to kind of just recognize the pattern. I've met with a lot of parents of anxious teens who then say, I realized that I was helping them avoid,
right?
And that they weren't learning how to deal with that stressful situation as a result.
Right. And teens want to risk take.
That's true.
Healthy teens want to risk take. Healthy teens all of a sudden want to join the debate team when they've never spoken to anybody.
I wonder what that
could be like. But so if your teen all of a sudden is not risk taking, even in the subtlest of ways, and wearing something new, or you have to begin to go, they're supposed to be risk taking. Some do it subtle, some are like my daughter shaved the side of her head,
No, that's a really good point. I think that, and it shows how much you really know about sort of the development of kids, because I think that we sometimes see some of these adolescents who are chronically anxious and depressed kind of stuck emotionally. They're not taking these steps. They're not risk taking. They're not sort of pushing back.
Yes.
They want. We all achieved independence at some point, right? Well, maybe. Maybe not, just depending.
But, we are in Miami.
Yeah, exactly. But in general,
moms are older. I still depend on mine, but okay, what I think about that.
So never mind what I just said.
Except in Miami.
Right, except in Miami. But in general, people want to achieve independence. It's a life task, right? And a lot of these adolescents that we work with here in Miami, they don't have a plan for moving on. They don't have a plan to separate. And some of that might be cultural, but some of that also really might just be, the anxiety talking and the sense of dependence and worry about, can I do it on my own? Because I haven't really experienced that. I haven't really learned how to do that.
Yeah.
So before we move on to some of our questions, and make sure you definitely share your questions. I can't, before we got interrupted, I can't stress enough the amazingness that I'm sitting between right here. So I got the U on this side. I'm not a cane or anything like that. And our ongoing counselor and consultant and mental health expert, Lina. So I just want to make sure that and we didn't get to, if you weren't here at the beginning, Jill is a psychologist with the UM School of Psychiatry. Did I get that right? I keep getting psychology. I'm so tired.
She didn't go to medical school.
I'm not going to pretend that I went to medical school just because it's Facebook Live.
It's been a long
day.
PhD. I apologize. So anyway, I wanted to, what are some tips, right? So I see the anxiety in mine, in their behavior and as well balanced that everybody thinks that, our children are. I see it, right? So what are some of maybe some warning signs, and then to help parents say, okay, well, I'm seeing that. Right. At what point do you say, maybe we should, talk to a counselor? Because the the best thing that I learned from Lina just on our conversations was that their brain is different, right? That's not, that I'm not dealing with the adult that is rational and it doesn't want to take risks and all that. So I think it's really important to have tips on how to identify that, and when is it a good time to seek some counseling?
Well, I think, like I mentioned before, I think that the things that you're looking for, is it more than you would expect, looking at their peers, looking at other kids their age, is it more frequent? Is it more excessive? Okay. Is it something that, is getting in the way? Is it getting in the way of their sleeping, their eating, their ability to make friends, keep friends, get their work done at school? It could be any one of those things, or it could be many of those things. Okay. Are you feeling that pull that we talked about earlier to just kind of keep them back all the time because they're emitting so much distress? I think those are things that start to tell you that this might be more than, what we would typically see. And, maybe it's time just to talk to somebody about whether that is in fact more than. There are times where somebody has brought me, an adolescent to work with, and I say, it's actually not as bad. It's adolescence. You have an adolescent, but many times the parent's instinct is right on.
Right. Yeah, I was about to say that. Like, trust mommy gut. Your mama gut. Like, a lot of you guys are out there thinking that your child may be a little too sad or a little too scared, and your own personal stigmas behind what mental health means, and your own fear of, like, what's my child going to feel like if I take them to a therapist? And I would say to you, if your gut is screaming, listen to it, and allow someone like Jill or someone like myself to say to you, okay, you got a normal teen, get the hell out of my office. Right. Or, okay, mom, something's going on here. Right. I am a firm believer in rule it out, because the other thing about, adolescence is it's that, it's in the development of a human being, it's a highly dangerous time. It is. And the impulsivity that they have makes them a little bit dangerous, because maybe there's that, every person that has been around a teenager, there's that one day that it's the end of the world. Right. Right. And that's just
as positive as they can be. That's right. They may be smiling 99% of the time, but there's always that one moment.
And that's, the shifts in neurology and the reactivity. But if you have a young person that's feeling depressed or feeling anxious, in that one bad day, and with impulsivity, they may make a critical mistake. Yeah. That's right. And so I would say that for a lot of parents, your gut is screaming, but you're convincing yourself that there's nothing wrong.
And I think it's not to say that you can prevent every developmental mistake, right? No. Like you can't. No. But I think that, if you feel like this is something that you can feel that something is just going on that maybe they can't tell you, you know, and that's okay too, you know, and we've had lots of parents who have come in and said, well, I actually, you know, we interview the child and we interview the parents separately when they come into my research clinic at UM. And a lot of times parents like, I don't know, you're going to have to ask them what they're feeling, because it's internalizing. It is inside, you know, so many of these kids, you know, have not shared the depth
with anyone.
Right. So, you know, relying on sort of that gut, you know, but not sort of beating yourself up if you've missed a couple of times where, you know, maybe they have taken risks that they shouldn't have, or maybe, you know, they're gotten distressed or had some kind of negative consequences. It's not too late.
Never.
You know, it's not too late to, you know, to step in, even if they're really having some significant problems. You know, the good thing about therapy for anxiety is that it works.
Exactly. And I think it's amazing that we're in, we're going to get to your question right now. Candy. So we're in 2018 and it still flabbergasts me that we still have a stigma, you know, that somehow that you have a failure in parenting because you're taking your child to speak to a counselor, and it couldn't be anything more polar opposite. And I want to say that as a parent who parents 2 teenagers and 1 shot, I can say that there's nothing more comforting than that just following your gut, but also in working with someone who can and really take it to another level, because I didn't go to school for that, right? And so I don't really know. I'm just a parent, right? So just because you gave birth doesn't mean that you can. It comes with the instruction manual, right? So I think that part is why you shouldn't be parenting alone, right?
Yes, don't parent alone. So I like Candy's question. She asked, for a tween or teen that has never had a meeting with a counselor, how do you explain to them that counseling would be a good option? You know, I'm a firm believer in being, you know, in going in with the truth and saying, you know, buddy, I've seen that, you know, you and I have been fighting more, and, you know, I find that you and I have, you know, I've been worried about you, and there's somebody that I can bring you to that can talk to you about your feelings, that can talk to you about things that may be concerning you in your mind that you don't really feel comfortable talking to me about, and know that, you know, we can visit more than one person, and you can let me know who you feel comfortable with. And I think that, you know, just don't make it like, oh, we're going to go to the therapist. And, you know, and maybe you have depression and anxiety.
Or threaten. I actually have had a friend of mine.
I'm going to take you to the therapist.
Threatened that we're in.
If you don't shape up, you're going to have to go to the therapist.
Right. It's just counterintuitive to me. So I'm like, okay, anyway. But I think
that's like the little tiny ones. The police are going to come get you.
Right. Or like we switched Santa to we're going to go, that's not going to happen because you behave badly. Or, you know, it's just like, I think it's a crazy thing that we somehow turn around that conversation and use it as a threat.
You know, we have a surprising number of families where they've shown up to our initial assessment and the child thinks that they're there for a doctor's appointment, like a medical appointment.
Yes.
Like they haven't had any conversation at all, you know, and I think it goes to the depth to which a lot of these parents of anxious and depressed teens, you know, feel like they need to avoid or like protect or keep them in bubble wrap, you know, that they can't handle, you know, this idea that, you know, maybe talking to somebody could be helpful. And I'm just gonna be honest, I think therapy could be helpful for everybody.
Everybody.
It's amazing. It's a luxury.
I love my therapist.
Right, me too.
I love mine.
Right. I mean, I think that, you know, it is a great thing to be able to talk to somebody objectively about what's going on in your life and to reflect. Absolutely. And, you know, that is very hard for adolescents to do just developmentally. And so, you know, the opportunity to it's building a skill, you know, to be able to learn how to reflect and to think about the future. That's all hard things that are hard for an adolescent. So you can't necessarily expect when you first start the conversation that they're going to anticipate that it's going to be helpful or that they're going to be down with it like 100%. You know, so we usually try to build motivation over time as therapists. That's part of the therapist's job is to...
We have to win your kid over.
That's right. We need to make them want to come back.
And I think that it's a fair point that like you said before, it may not be the right one from the beginning. It's like a doctor in the sense of, I know you didn't go to medical school. I'm
a doctor, but
I got it right now.
Yes. Medical school.
So, but I think that it's fair to say that maybe they didn't jive with that person from the beginning, and that's okay. I think that that's okay. Like I actually had that experience, and so they just didn't feel, because I'm always plural, didn't feel comfortable, with that setting. They didn't like the setting. They didn't really like, so that wasn't helping the process. So when we moved on to someone else, then that jived and it worked, and that helped out. I think Sonia's point, hi babushka. I wish I would have done counseling with the trio. She's so funny. But some of us, I don't have the option of having learned from a first child to then go on to, I either did well or I messed it up with two, right? So with the twins, Juanesito, the twins. But I really do think that parents with, even the younger tweens have such an opportunity to start conversations earlier.
Absolutely.
The earlier, the better. Not that you're lost at an adolescent, but I think if we could touch on that a little bit, earlier is good.
Earlier is definitely good. And, when we think about when anxiety and depression emerge, it often is in these early to mid, adolescence, the late school years, going through puberty. I think we can all remember that was not fun. Right. And that, it promotes a lot of anxiety and worry, hormonally, normally. And so you're going to see a spike in symptoms around that time and afterwards. So, if you're seeing that, part of that could be developmentally normal, but part of that could also be an exacerbation of something that is real. And, this is a great time early on before things become so entrenched, and people become so avoidant or withdrawn that there are consequences for it, and I think I can't encourage people enough to think early, with prevention.
And those of you that have seen me on this Facebook Live before, or those of you that know me personally, I'm always thinking about the brain. And here's the thing about a seeking assistant earlier, the brain learns through repetition and experience. Right. So for somebody that is dealing with their anxiety or dealing with their depression, they are creating strategies to manage it. Right. So the depressed kid may be avoiding that one class and skipping that one class, but now that's a strategy because it's worked. And, and then it just becomes it becomes habitual. So then now instead of just skipping one class, now they're not going to want to go to school. I had a client where, I had to wait outside of the school and be like, okay, buddy, let's get in there. Okay. And that was our time together. I met her at school because mom could only get her to the parking lot. Right. And so it's important why earlier or why to keep an eye out, because, the longer the strategy is there, the harder it is to break it down and to make a case to their brain of we are not going to use this habit anymore. Right. Because it's worked.
Right.
I mean, I can't really underscore what you're saying enough. I think that there is really mounting evidence that the kind of therapy we do, which is exposure therapy largely, for anxiety, where we're asking people to approach something that maybe they've been avoiding, to deal with it little bits at a time and tolerate the distress that they feel in it, that it literally changes how you deal with fear in the brain. That you are creating new learning. And that you're creating new pathways in the brain, really, or using other pathways more effectively, I think might be the better way to put it.
Yeah.
And so, that idea, whether it's through this kind of therapy or other kinds of therapy, there's a lot of ways to get to the same place. We know that there are some really positive changes that can affect the whole course of how one approaches things that scare them in their lives moving forward.
So one thing, because we're getting in about 20 minutes, so I definitely wanted to, because we hear so much, they're depressed. Teenagers are depressed. It's always, and I think it's I don't want to label it as it's the same thing as when they say they're being bullied, right? I just think we have to be careful with the words that labels. We choose and the labels, right? And I know that you say that a lot. Me too. And so
I have OCD. Yeah, and you're like, you don't know what that that is. It's
Right.
painful.
Right. That's true.
And so I'd love for you to touch on what's the difference, right? And what are signs, because parents struggle so much with maybe they're just having a bad day and they're sad, to is it habitually sad and it really is something clinical?
Right.
So, and not use it as, well, they're depressed, don't worry about it. You know, I definitely think I would love to share that.
Absolutely. Well, I think of depression as really having two features. One is that idea of sadness, but it also in teens very often can be irritability. And that might be like, oh, okay, well, they're all depressed, right? Every, you know, I've just made everybody feel like their teen is depressed. But it's a really heightened irritability. It's more than just the I don't want to talk to you today kind of irritability.
Okay.
And it's something, once again, that is getting in the way for them. So it could be that sadness, it could be that irritability. But the other feature of depression that's really important, and I think people forget about it a lot, is its loss of interest in things that people used to enjoy. And it's not I got interested in something else, you know, and I've stopped being, you know, I have an 8-year-old and he's constantly interested in like something else. Like it's the next thing, right? Like Pokemon was yesterday, like tomorrow is like whatever else on YouTube that he just found. Sorry, now I feel like I've said I'm a horrible parent now. But,
no, you just joined the community.
Exactly.
Anyway, but you know, this idea of, you know, I have really withdrawn from things that I used to enjoy. And, you know, you see these teens, you know, all teens sleep a lot, you know, during the day or other times, you know, and not sleep at other times, like at night. But, you know, these things are going to be much more excessive in the depressing. And I think any mom out there who has been depressed themselves, you know that there's a difference. There's a difference between just feeling down in the dumps or being upset at a stressful situation and feeling like you don't want to get out of bed in the morning or you don't want to deal with things anymore, and that it's going to go on for at least a few weeks.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, for your mama brain, teens like to risk take. Teens like to, you know, do the group chat and play online with their friends because that's the way that we're social. You know, we no longer go to the bakery center for those of you that are over 40.
Not me.
So it's because, and if those two, I always look at that. Whenever I meet with a teen, I always look, where are they risk taking? How is that the health of their social group? Nowadays, a lot of the teens are, you know, find one another on their phones. You know, they have group chats or they're playing on their Xbox with one another. And that's healthy too. It's just a new form of social engagement. But as a parent, I would look at that, you know, a depressed child is that's not going to be as healthy.
Especially if it's not their only connection. Right. If there's no, you know, I really do think, and I think there's mounting literature to support this, that if that's the only way that they're connecting with other people, that not only could that be indicative of depression, but it also might be promoting of depression.
Yes.
Right. Okay. You don't know how to, if you don't learn how to interact with somebody in real life. And maybe eventually that's going to be how we all interact, not in real life. Right. But for now, you know, there is something very isolative and really that pulls you away from, you know, a place that is about kind of growth, you know, and again, I think those things over time can lead to somebody feeling more anxious and depressed.
Okay. I think we should definitely share how your study that you have ongoing. I would love for you to talk about that. I know it's in Miami, but that's okay. It's great weather here. You might want to visit.
Yeah, come on down. You know, one of the wonderful things about doing research out in the community on effective treatments is that you sometimes get to partner with amazing therapists and clinics. And we're actually partnering with Stop Parenting Alone.
Yay!
For a study that we have called the COMET study, which is funded by the National Institute of Mental Health. And I won't, you know, bore you with all the details, but basically what we're doing is just studying a couple of different types of treatment that we think are effective for teens, including what great therapists do normally, like the great therapists that Stop Parenting Alone. And we're really interested in just kind of following them and seeing, you know, how, you know, teenagers who have anxiety, who have depression, who have OCD, or those kinds of problems. How do they do in these different types of therapies? So when they call Stop Parenting Alone, or whether they call the COMET study at the University of Miami, we'll, offer them some options to just learn first about what's going on. And then, and then the possibility of being seen normally as Stop Parenting Alone, but with a therapist who might be doing one of these different kinds of therapies.
Right. So if you've listened to this conversation and you find that maybe, you want to know whether your child might be anxious or depressed, know that we are now partnering with UM, and you can give our office a call, and
it's all about the you.
I don't even know what
I feel like I've done it so much.
I don't know anything about it. She's not a cane. My husband is. My husband's probably at home going. But so yes, so we are very, very honored to have been asked to be one of the sites, and so come on over, give us a call, and we'll see if you are a good match for the research study.
And on an ongoing basis, we have our Ask Lina Corner for los tweens and teens. So make sure that you send us your questions. We have columns that Lina works on, and we are going to a monthly Facebook Live schedule. So we're definitely going to be bringing this more. So make sure that you share with us what are your concerns. And it's not easy. You shouldn't be parenting alone.
No. And another thing that's happening at Stop Parenting Alone is that we, on April 8th, it's a Sunday. We're making it like really after church or whatever you're doing in the morning. We're going to have a little program for adolescent girls, and it's called Loud Women, and it's being run by our friend who's an NLP and a practitioner, and she's going to be doing kind of the way that I see it is that it's going to help the girls take out the stuff from the luggage that you parents gave them.
Not me.
Whoopsie. And we're going to put new things in their luggage so they can launch into adulthood. Nice. And there's going to be different it's every 2 weeks, and there's going to be different topics. And then the first one on April 8th, I'll be special guest star talking to the parents about all the different weeks and what we're going to be talking about to the girls, so that then you can get some information. And then I'll be doing little tiny videos that go along with the weeks, so then you'll have information. So it's another great thing that we're doing, and it's for adolescent girls. So I'm working on the boy one because sometimes we forget about the men.
That's true.
And on International Women's Day, I just want to say it was amazing to rock it out with like amazing women right here. So that definitely is a plus that we're talking about mentoring girls, but definitely moms of boys, which Candy is a mom of boys, as is Amanda, who has joined us. So definitely, mom of boys, we're going to bring you stuff as well. So it won't be all just girl stuff. But in general, definitely, I think if we learned anything from our conversation today, and unfortunately all the events that have happened in Parkland, is that we need to be listening and watching and paying attention. So if we could give our parents one last tip before we go, I'd love to make sure that convey like where can they be listening the most, or what's a sign to make sure that we're looking for as we listen.
I challenge everyone that's watching us tonight to really take a good look at your child, not the child that you think they should be or the child that you wish they could be, but really take a look at them as the human being that's sitting across from you. Because a lot of the times you miss things because you are looking at them through a lens of what you wish for them to be. And just one little thing about Parkland, it was sad and tragic, but let's also take a really, really good look at all those teenagers and what they have done.
Absolutely.
In less than 3 weeks. Legislation just changed in the state of Florida. It wasn't perfect.
Right.
But some major things were put into that bill, and those parks to take credit for that. So that those teenagers are out there too, and I'm always like, every time I see that the Emma Gonzalez, is that her last name? I'm like, who are her parents? Where are her parents? And because they made someone. They created that citizen, and she's a beautiful citizen. And I would say to all of you, slow down and take a look at your children, like take off the glasses. It's hard to do, like I just, my daughter is, they're almost 13 and I am now like in adolescence, like full blown. And I knew it intellectually and I knew it from all the books, but now I'm feeling it as a parent and it is hard stuff. So know it's hard stuff and know that you're grieving your baby, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that, if we've learned something from the aftermath of what's happened with Parkland, it's how resilient people can be, and the many ways that people cope. We're seeing some very visible community activists who are coping in a particular way, but there is a whole variety of healthy ways to cope, and these are ways that also people can learn. And if I can really just leave with one sort of take home message for all the parents out there, it's that if you see that your child is feeling more anxious than usual or they're more down than usual, know that there is help for learning how to cope more effectively. That these are skills that somebody can adopt and they can be empowered. I look back at some of the people that I've worked with long ago, and I think about, the idea of learning how to adjust your vision for how to deal with fear in your body can impact the course of your life. It can really set in motion a path of being more engaged. And so, the therapy that is out there can help in the moment, but it can also help adopt an attitude that can be healthy and helpful for the rest of their lives.
Yep. All righty. Well, with that, how do you give them the tools to teach what to look for within their own peers? That's a quickie.
Next week.
Exactly.
At our next episode.
Right back to that.
No, but a quickie on that one. How do we give them the tools or teach them what to look for within their own peers? Ask them, let's say that something happens, something absurd that your child does because they're adolescents and they're risk-taking and, they made an impulsive choice. Instead of telling them what you thought they should do, ask them this: what do you think you could do next time?
That's a great question.
With everything that happened this time, what do you think you could do next time? And what you do there is that you're helping them think through and process what just happened and come up with their own solution. When you talk at an adolescent, they don't hear you, because this upper area of the brain wants to debate with you and, wants to create more and more, upper cortex information. And the more you make that work, just like when they were tiny, and they were pulling up to walk, the more you will build that area of the brain that helps us make decisions. So the key question in adolescence is, what do you think? And what do you think you will do next time?
Right. Versus guilt. Versus let's make them feel bad about it. 100%. And that's hard. That's hard to make sure that shift happens.
Or fear, or use fear to make them make a decision. If you do this, then you know what's going to happen. Then you're going to get pregnant, and and your kid is like, their risk-taking machine in their brain is like, I'm not going to listen to the parental figure.
Right. Well, that's just modeling. More anxiety
and more fear. So.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you again so much. We are going to try to merge part 1 with part 2. See how that goes. But nonetheless, we will have it on the page and for everyone to listen. And we'll be bringing a whole new series of Facebook Lives. And thank you again to these phenomenal women. And happy International Women's Day.
Yay!
Ciao.
Yay, women.
Good night.